Brisket!
What if we've been smoking brisket the wrong way this entire time? What if there was a better method of smoking brisket and all we had to do was reverse the process that we're following? For example, most brisket recipes call for wrapping your brisket in aluminum foil or butcher's paper. Once the internal temperature hits 165 to 175, the bark is set. But what if we could reverse that process and wrap the brisket first and then smoke it? Would that result in better bark? Would that result in a better, more juicy brisket? Would it change the way that we smoke brisket forever? That's what I wanted to experiment with in this video, so let's get smoking.
Let's trim some brisket. This Brant Lake Wagyu brisket started off with a pretty good trim from the butcher, so all I'm doing is rounding the flat off and spot trimming the fat cap in areas to get it closer to a 1/4 inch thickness. Then I'm flipping it over and shaving the silver skin off with a very long and sharp slicing knife, and moving over to the hard chunk of fat on the bottom, I'm carving that down pretty aggressively. Moving on to the rub, I'm using a basic 50-50 mixture of salt and pepper for this brisket, just keeping it simple. And then I'm wrapping the brisket in a layer of butcher's paper. This really feels weird wrapping it right now, but I'm excited to see how this thing's gonna turn out. Will it be the best brisket I've ever cooked, or will it be a total train wreck? Not gonna lie, I'm leaning more towards train wreck at this point, but I'm hoping I get surprised by the end result. Outside, I'm firing up Big Beefy Luigi by making a wood teepee in my firebox, and then I'm hitting it with my grill gun. This handheld legal flamethrower lights fires in about 60 seconds, making it a lot more convenient than a charcoal chimney. Links in the description section below if you guys want one. It's probably my most used barbecue tool and well worth the investment in my view. When the smoker temp comes up to around 250, I'm putting the brisket in the cooker, point to the fire, and that's pretty much it. It's time to wait and monitor the temperatures and manage the fire because I'm taking this brisket all the way to finishing temperature in this wrap. At around 130 degrees internal, I checked the brisket and the wrap looked surprisingly dry. I was expecting it to soak up a lot of moisture and look really wet, but it just kind of looks like it's wicking the moisture off the brisket and then wicking it to the surface, and the hot air is taking it away. Interestingly, the darker spots on the butcher paper gave me an exact indication of where the brisket was getting the most heat. In a way, wrapping from the outside is kind of giving me a brisket-sized biscuit test to see the heat distribution from my smoker on an actual brisket, which is kind of cool. Around 9 hours later at 170 degrees internal, I probed the brisket just to get an initial feel for how it was going. It was getting tender, but I could tell it still had a long ways to go. And finally, a few hours later, almost 14 hours into the cook, I probed the brisket again, and it was probing tender in areas, but to my surprise, the top of the point was only reading 165 degrees, while the rest of the brisket was 190 degrees. Again, this was after almost 14 hours. I unwrapped the brisket slightly and noticed there was a double layer of butcher paper covering the top of the brisket, and it seemed to have created what I think is an air gap. That, combined with the dryness of the butcher paper, could have been the cause for the low temperature on the top of the brisket. In any event, it was 11 p.m. and I had to work the next day, so I took the brisket out and popped it in my electric smoker to hold at 150 degrees Fahrenheit and hopefully finish overnight. In the morning, the brisket looked like it was finally done, so I popped it in the fridge to bring the temperature down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm doing this because smoke sticks better to cold meat, and I'm simulating a scenario where I would potentially cook a brisket all day completely wrapped, either in the smoker or the oven or the electric smoker. It doesn't really matter. And then I would pop it in the fridge overnight, and then I'd reheat it on the smoker the next day. And after it was sufficiently refrigerated, I put the brisket back on the smoker at around 250 degrees until it came up in temperature to 150 degrees Fahrenheit internal temp. I wanted to surprise my dad with a great last-minute gift for his birthday, and that's why I'm so glad Established Titles reached out to sponsor this video. Dad, I got you a special gift for your birthday.
What'd you get?
I got you a square foot of land in Scotland, and your name is now registered as Lord William Henry Gow. Whoa. You are now a Scottish lord.
I'm a Scottish lord. This is great. This is actually great. All my ancestors are going to be proud. All my Scottish ancestors. Thank you, son.
Yeah, you're welcome, Dad. Happy birthday. Established Titles is a project based on Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lords and ladies. So if you buy as little as 1 square foot of land from them, you too can be a lord or lady, and you can even put it on your plane ticket, your credit card, or dating profile to look like a total boss. A title pack gives you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and this cool official certificate with a crest and a unique plot number showing the exact location of your land. It's a great last-minute gift gift, and you can even get a couples pack so you and your partner can get land right next to each other. Even better, your first act as Lord can be to save the environment and create a better future for your children, because they plant a tree with every order and work with global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support global reforestation efforts. Now, I know I mentioned this before, but it really makes an amazing last-minute gift, and now's the time to get it because Established Titles is running a massive sale. Plus, if you use the code STBBQ, you'll get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/STBBQ to get your gifts now and help support the channel.
All right, let's do this. So I'm just gonna do a cut right down the center. Whoop! Whoa! That is a lot juicier than I thought. Look at that knife. There's a ton of juice dripping off that. I'm kind of excited about this, not gonna lie. Okay, whoa! Whoa! Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. This is crazy. Let's take a look at this. Look at all that moisture. Oh my God. That fat is so well rendered. This is a lot better rendered than I thought it would be. This is crazy. Let's take a little sliceroonie from this. My fear is that the fat isn't going to be very well rendered. Oh, that was a pretty bad slice. Oh well. Yeah, my fear is that the fat isn't going to be extremely well rendered. If we take a look at it, I mean, the brisket looks pretty well cooked. We can do a tear test here. Kind of worried. Oh, it's actually perfectly cooked. The fat is, it feels a little bit tough. It feels a little bit tough, to be honest, but it's still coming apart a lot better than I thought it would. So let's give it a taste. I'm gonna give myself a fresh slice here, and I'm not gonna screw it up this time. So let's do a nice thick slice. That's actually not a bad looking brisket. Wait a second. One thing I just noticed is that there's a smoke ring on this sucker. And I was not anticipating that because smoke isn't supposed to get through the butcher paper wrap and shouldn't be able to penetrate the meat where it interacts with the myoglobin and creates the smoke ring. So this is really interesting. This kind of suggests that the smoke was penetrating through the butcher paper, which is something that I totally didn't expect. Oh. Wow, that's really good. The fat is actually really good. It's nice and sweet. It's got a lot of flavor to it. The meat is perfectly cooked. The smoke is a lot less potent than my normal briskets that I smoke first and then wrap. You can tell that there's not as much smoke flavor, but this could theoretically be appealing to someone that doesn't like smoke as much or just wants a light flavoring of smoke, because you can still taste it, but it's very light. There's a close-up of the point. It looks pretty good, actually. It's not bad at all. And the bark looks pretty good, too. All right, guys, my impression of this brisket and my take on this reverse wrap method. Is it a better way of smoking brisket? When I started this video and I was planning this video, I thought that this conclusion segment would be a categorical no. This is the worst brisket I've ever tasted, and that's what I would say. But that's not what happened. This brisket was actually really good. And I'm gonna serve it up to my family and my friends, and they probably won't even notice a difference from my regular briskets. They will notice, however, that it's probably not as smoky. The thing that surprised me is that this still got a smoke ring, which tells me that the smoke gases actually got through that butcher paper during the smoking process and formed that smoke ring, which was something that I didn't anticipate. The cons of this method, as I mentioned before, you don't get as much smoke flavor. The bark wasn't as crispy, it wasn't as well rendered. However, that could have just been my smoker, and the top of the brisket just wasn't getting as much heat. But if you were the type of person that wanted to cook this in your oven on, let's say, Saturday all day, and either put it in butcher paper and or you could do it in foil and really just get a super tender brisket and concentrate on like controlling all the variables and making your brisket amazing, then just resting it in the fridge overnight once it's perfectly cooked, and then throwing it on the smoker the next day for a few hours right before you serve it. I think this is the kind of recipe that you would use in that situation. And the benefit there, and I think it would be cool, is that you could just pop it in the smoker to reheat it, and right before you eat dinner or lunch, you can kind of gather your family around and everyone's outside, about to eat outside, and you open your smoker and you pull out that brisket. Because I think that's one of the things that's missing from smoking a brisket is everyone is always super pumped to eat brisket, but you're long done with your smoker by the time that you actually end up serving the brisket to them. So I think this is a really cool way of adding some showmanship to your barbecues. It's a viable method for cooking the brisket the day before and reheating it the next day. Doesn't have as much smoke flavor, doesn't have as much fat rendering, but otherwise the brisket is really good. A couple things I will say is that this method took a really long time, longer than my briskets normally take. It took about 14 hours just to get this brisket to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, or just under 190, and it wasn't even done. I had to hold it in my Masterbuilt electric smoker at 150 overnight to actually get it across the finish line. So this method could take a really long time because the wrap is blocking the heat if you use butcher paper like I did. I suspect that if I used foil, which I admittedly probably should have done, because it probably would have cooked the brisket faster, and it probably would have been cooked more evenly and been even more juicy than this and had better fat rendering. I think it would cook a lot faster, but I wouldn't have got a smoke ring if that kind of thing matters to you. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and thanks for coming along the journey in this video. It was a really cool video to do, and to be honest, I almost didn't do it, but I was under a time crunch because I had to get a video out this week, and I just came up with this concept in like 1 hour and scripted it out, and I was just kind of like a stroke of inspiration. You could call it an actual stroke or a stroke of inspiration, but I just had this idea of what if you smoked a brisket in reverse and wrapped it first and then smoked it afterwards? Didn't make much sense in my mind, but I'm glad that I actually did it because I think it does have some validity and it has a use case in certain scenarios. So thanks for coming along the journey, and thanks for bearing with me in this kind of weird video that you might not expect me to do normally. If you guys want to chat all things brisket related and barbecue related, consider joining my Patreon channel. I'll link it in the description section below. We're building an awesome little community there where we just help each other get better at barbecue. We share a lot of our barbecue pictures and just go through common struggles that we're having, and I'll give advice to people. But I'm really impressed with how everyone in my community is, in a lot of cases, smarter than me, and they have a lot of tips about barbecue that I would never have thought of. So consider joining that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Happy smoking.